It all began quietly, like a subtle shift in the air, unnoticed at first but slowly permeating everything. My relationship with Lily, my older sister, had always been one of love and rivalry. We had our moments, of course, arguments over trivial things when we were kids, the occasional misunderstanding. But we always worked things out, at least until that one summer. That was the summer when everything changed. It wasn't a major event that sparked the shift. No big fight or dramatic moment. It started small, almost innocuous. One of those things you might not even notice until you look back and realize that the trajectory of your life had altered in the tiniest of ways. Lily and I were both in our 20s by then. I had recently finished my degree, and she had just gotten a new job in a city an hour away. The distance was both literal and metaphorical. We were growing apart, not just in terms of physical space but emotionally too. It seemed like the more time went on, the more Lily began to criticize me, pointing out things she thought were wrong with the way I lived my life. First, I brushed it off. She was my older sister. It was normal for her to be more opinionated. But it wasn't just advice she was offering, it felt more like an attack. She began to nitpick about everything. How I dressed, how I handled relationships, how I managed my career. It wasn't just once or twice, it was constant. And then there was the way she would subtly undermine my choices, making them seem less valid. If I made a decision, she would ask questions that made me second-guess myself, and if I didn't agree with her, she'd look at me with that dismissive look she always had, like I was just a little too naive to understand things the way she did. It was exhausting. The worst part of it, though, was that it wasn't just a personal thing anymore. She started bringing it into the family. Our parents, who had always been the peacekeepers, the ones who balanced our differences, were now starting to side with her. It was like Lily was planting these tiny seeds of doubt in their minds. And one by one, those seeds grew into this tangled mess of suspicions. One evening, we were having dinner at our parents' house, a normal family meal. Nothing unusual, except that Lily had been acting a bit off. She was quieter than usual, almost like she was observing everyone around her. I didn't think much of it until halfway through the meal when she casually mentioned, in the middle of a conversation, that she had noticed how unstable I was becoming. The way she said it was so calm, so matter-of-fact, like it was the most natural thing to say. "Lena's been acting a little off lately," she said, without even looking at me. "It's like she's on edge all the time. She gets upset over the smallest things. It's worrying, actually." My heart skipped a beat. I looked at her, trying to gauge if she was joking, but her expression was unreadable. Our parents didn't say anything at first, but I could feel the air around us change. They exchanged a glance, and I could tell they were considering what Lily had said. "Are you okay, honey?" my mom asked me, her voice full of concern. It was a simple question, but the way she asked it, the tone in her voice, it was like she was already seeing me through a different lens. I didn't know how to respond. I had been fine, perfectly fine, until Lily had planted that little seed in their minds. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know why she would say that. I've been a little stressed with work lately. That's all." But my mom didn't seem convinced. She looked at me closely, almost like she was searching for something. I felt a lump form in my throat. I didn't understand why Lily would say such a thing. We had always been close, and yet here she was making me sound like I was losing control. Dinner continued in an awkward silence. Lily went on with her usual conversation, but it felt like there was a strange tension in the air. I could see my father glance at me every now and then, but he didn't say anything. He was always the quiet one, the one who never really intervened in our arguments. But this time it felt different. I knew they were both thinking about what Lily had said, weighing the possibility that maybe there was something wrong with me. I tried to shake it off that night. I told myself it was just a small comment, that Lily had probably said it out of frustration or something. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. She had been planting these little thoughts in their heads, turning things that were normal into signs of something deeper. The cracks in the family dynamic that I had once ignored were starting to widen. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Lily would say something offhand about me, something that seemed small but carried weight. At family gatherings, she would casually mention how unpredictable I was becoming. She'd point out little things I did, exaggerating them in ways that made me seem like I was struggling with something. I had no idea how to fight back. Every time I tried to explain myself, she would twist my words, framing me as someone who couldn't handle the pressure of life. It wasn't just my parents who were beginning to listen to her. Our extended family started to take notice too. I remember visiting my aunt's house one afternoon. It was supposed to be a light-hearted visit, a chance to catch up, but it turned into another one of Lily's subtle manipulations. My aunt, who had always been one of my biggest supporters, seemed distant. She didn't make eye contact as often, and when she spoke to me, there was a hint of hesitation in her voice. Lily was right there, offering her usual commentary on how I had been acting strange lately. The tone in her voice was soft but insistent, like she was trying to plant a seed in my aunt's mind. And it worked. The next time I saw my aunt, she pulled me aside. "Lena, are you sure you're okay? You know, Lily's been really worried about you. She said you've been kind of off lately." That was when the reality of what Lily was doing hit me. It wasn't just some harmless comment. She was systematically making everyone think there was something wrong with me. She was convincing them one by one that I wasn't the person they thought I was. And what hurt the most was that no one seemed to question it. No one was asking for my side of the story. They were just accepting what Lily said as truth. I spent the next few weeks in a daze. Every interaction felt like I was walking on eggshells. I started to second-guess myself, wondering if there was something wrong with me that I hadn't noticed. Was I really being paranoid? Was I truly becoming someone who couldn't handle life? My mind started to spiral. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every conversation I had, searching for signs that maybe there was something I was missing. Maybe Lily was right, and I had lost control. But deep down I knew it wasn't me. I knew something was off about this whole situation. I had always been a level-headed person, someone who could handle stress and anxiety. Sure, I had moments of frustration like anyone does, but I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the one spiraling. Lily was the one who had a pattern of manipulation, and I was beginning to see it clearly now. The turning point came one evening when I had a long conversation with my best friend, Sophie. I needed someone who could see things from an outside perspective. Sophie had known me for years, and she knew what kind of person I was. I told her everything. About the comments Lily had been making, the way my family was starting to treat me differently, and how I was feeling more and more isolated. "Lena," Sophie said softly, "I think your sister's playing mind games with you. She's been making you doubt yourself." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the first time someone had said it out loud, and it was the wake-up call I needed. I wasn't the one losing control. It was Lily who had been manipulating me and everyone else. And it was time for me to take back control. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. If I was going to prove that I wasn't the one who was crazy, I had to start gathering evidence, even if it meant exposing my sister for who she really was. The battle for my own sanity had just begun. The initial shock of Lily's manipulation was hard to grasp, but as time went on, it became increasingly clear that I was fighting a battle I hadn't been prepared for. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping that if I simply stayed true to myself, the truth would eventually be apparent to everyone around me. But that was before I realized how deep Lily's influence had run. She had been planting seeds of doubt for so long that they had started to sprout, creating a landscape where I was the one in the wrong, and she was the concerned sister just looking out for me. What had been small comments here and there at first, insinuations about my mental state or my behavior, soon escalated into something more insidious. It wasn't just about the family anymore. It felt like the whole world was turning against me. The looks of concern on my parents' faces whenever I walked into the room became more frequent. I had tried to shake off the feeling that something was off, but every time I interacted with anyone, I felt their judgment in the air like a thick fog. It was as if Lily had cast a spell on everyone around me, and I was the only one who could see through it. The breaking point came one evening when I was at home, sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. I hadn't realized how much I had withdrawn from the world, until I sat there, and realized that all I could think about was how I had become the problem. My mind was racing. What if Lily was right? What if I was losing it? But that line of thinking led nowhere but deeper despair. It was like a sinking feeling in my chest that only worsened with every passing day. I had to do something. But what? My thoughts were interrupted by a call from my mom. It was late, nearly 9 p.m. and I wasn't expecting it. I hesitated before answering, but then decided it was better to hear whatever it was than to leave it hanging. "Hey Mom," I said, trying to sound casual. "Lena, honey," my mom's voice came through, slightly strained. "We need to talk. It's about Lily." The blood drained from my face. I'd had a feeling something like this was coming, but hearing her say it out loud made everything real. My pulse quickened as I braced myself for whatever was about to be said. "I don't know how to say this," my mom continued, her voice wavering slightly, "but Lily thinks it's time for you to see a therapist. She says you're not dealing with things in a healthy way and we're worried. You've been acting distant and it's starting to affect everyone." I felt the ground shift beneath me. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. How had we reached this point? How had everything I had done, every choice I'd made, been warped in such a way that even my own family saw me as the problem? "Mom, that's not true," I finally managed, my voice trembling. "I've just been stressed. It's not like I'm having a breakdown or anything." But my mom didn't respond right away. There was silence on the other end of the line, and the weight of that silence crushed me. When she spoke again, it was soft, almost apologetic. "I know, sweetie, but maybe you should consider it. Maybe you need some help." And just like that, it felt like I was trapped. I couldn't believe my mom was suggesting something like this. It wasn't about me needing help. It was about Lily manipulating the situation so expertly that no one could see past her version of reality. The realization hit me like a wave crashing against the shore. I wasn't just fighting for my own sanity anymore. I was fighting for my very identity. My sense of self was slipping away, and Lily was the one holding the reins. I tried to explain myself again, but my mom wasn't hearing it. She was already convinced that I was struggling, that I was somehow unable to cope with life the way I had in the past. When the conversation ended, I hung up the phone feeling like I had lost a battle, without even having a chance to fight it. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, letting the cold weight of my mom's words sink in. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was losing control. But as I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, a thought began to take root in my mind. If I was going to prove that I wasn't the one who was crazy, if I was going to prove that it was Lily who had been manipulating everyone, I had to do something drastic. I had to gather evidence, real proof that I wasn't the one in the wrong. But how? How could I expose Lily's lies when everyone already thought I was the problem? It took me days to work up the courage to begin. But the more I thought about it, the clearer the plan became. I had to watch Lily closely. I needed to see the cracks in her behavior, to notice the patterns she created to control the narrative. I would document everything. Every conversation, every manipulation, every little lie. I had to prove that my suspicions weren't just paranoia. They were the truth. If I could get enough evidence, I could turn this around. The first step was to start documenting our interactions. I began keeping a journal of everything I could remember, noting the times when Lily said something strange or tried to twist the situation to make me look bad. I remembered a few incidents where I had caught her in subtle lies, and I made sure to write them down just in case. There were times when I felt like a detective, carefully piecing together the puzzle, but it was the only way to defend myself. I also started paying closer attention to Lily's behavior when we were together. Whether it was at family gatherings or casual hangouts, there were moments when I saw a side of her that I had never noticed before. Her tendency to manipulate others, her subtle need to control every situation. She had always been a little bossy, but now it seemed more deliberate. I watched how she would play the victim, how she would twist things to make herself look innocent and me look erratic. The signs were all there, and I began to see just how long she had been planting these seeds in the minds of everyone around me. One evening, I witnessed something that solidified everything I had suspected. We were at a family dinner, and Lily had been telling a story about how I had flipped out at her the week before over something trivial. She painted a picture of me as someone who was unstable, someone who couldn't control her emotions. I was so stunned that I couldn't speak. I hadn't even raised my voice, and yet here she was, painting me as the villain in front of everyone. My parents nodded along, concerned expressions on their faces. I felt sick to my stomach. But this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I stood up and confronted her, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "Lily, that's not what happened. You're twisting the truth. You're making me out to be someone I'm not. But she just shrugged, her face a mask of innocence. I'm just telling it how it is, Lena. If you can't handle the truth, maybe you're the one who needs help. Her words stung, and I could see the effect they had on everyone else in the room. My mom looked at me with concern. My father furrowed his brow, and even my cousins seemed uncomfortable. It was like the walls were closing in on me, and Lily was standing there in the center of it all, playing the role of the concerned sister, who was just trying to help. I walked away from the dinner that night feeling more isolated than ever. It was clear now. Lily wasn't just manipulating me, she was manipulating everyone. And she wasn't going to stop until she had completely rewritten the story. I knew I had to act fast if I was going to save myself and prove to everyone that I wasn't the crazy one. I wasn't sure how long it would take, but I was determined to gather the evidence I needed. I wasn't going to let Lily destroy me. I wasn't going to let her win. In the weeks that followed, I found myself slowly retreating into the shadows of my own life, as though I were waiting for something to change. Every attempt I made to fight back against Lily's growing influence seemed to fail before it even had a chance to take root. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. If I wanted to clear my name, to prove that I wasn't the one losing touch with reality, I had to do something more than just fight back with words. I had to be strategic. I had to gather evidence. At first, I didn't know where to begin. What could I possibly do to expose Lily's manipulations, to show everyone the truth? My mind was racing, turning over every encounter, every conversation, every subtle exchange that had occurred over the past few months. I knew that Lily was good at hiding behind a mask of innocence. She knew how to turn everything around on her terms, to make herself appear like the victim while painting me as the irrational one. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Lily had been making the same mistakes over and over, leaving traces of her lies behind. All I had to do was find them. It started small notes, diary entries, little pieces of evidence I could gather whenever I was with her. I knew that the key was in her own words, in the way she would twist the narrative to fit her story. So, I began paying closer attention, not just to what she said but how she said it, how she would manipulate every situation to make it look like I was in the wrong. It wasn't easy, living with the constant tension of watching my every word and action around her. But it was the only way to get closer to the truth. I began to record our conversations, carefully documenting any instance where she crossed the line between reality and fabrication. I knew it was risky, but I had no other choice. This wasn't just about protecting my reputation anymore. It was about protecting my family. If I could prove Lily's deceit, then I could free us all from the trap she had set. The first breakthrough came when I managed to record a conversation between us, one that revealed more than I had expected. We were sitting in the living room, discussing a recent family gathering where she had made yet another offhand comment about my mental state. It had been a particularly hard week for me, and I had felt overwhelmed by work and personal issues. But that didn't mean I was crazy, and I certainly wasn't about to let Lily make me seem like I was unstable. You know, Lena, Lily said with that ever-present calm in her voice, it's just that you've been so all over the place lately. It's like you can't handle anything. I frowned, holding back my frustration. What do you mean by that? You get so upset over small things. It's like you don't know how to calm down. You should really think about seeing someone, she said, her voice laced with that fake concern that made my skin crawl. I don't need therapy, Lily. I'm just going through a rough patch. Everyone does. But Lily wasn't finished. I know, but I'm just worried about you. You're becoming more difficult to be around. Sometimes it's just too much, you know? And I don't know how much longer I can handle it. It's draining, really. The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I felt like the ground was slipping away beneath me. This wasn't just casual concern. It was calculated manipulation. She wasn't just talking about me being emotional. She was trying to make me seem like I was a burden to everyone around me. And if my family heard this conversation, they would never believe me when I said that I wasn't the one who was spiraling. I sat there trying to keep my composure and recorded the conversation on my phone. It wasn't enough to turn the tide, but it was a start. The next step was to gather more evidence. I knew that if I was going to expose Lily, I had to show the patterns of behavior that had been so carefully hidden beneath her calm facade. So, I decided to dig deeper into her past. I had known Lily all my life, but there were things about her that I had never really questioned, things that now seemed more significant than ever. I started reaching out to some of the people she had been close with in the past, friends, acquaintances, anyone who might have seen a side of her that I hadn't. I called up Sarah, one of Lily's old friends from college. We hadn't spoken much since high school, but I knew that Sarah had always been close with Lily back then. I had no idea what I was hoping to find, but I needed something, anything that would shed light on Lily's behavior when she wasn't around our family. The conversation started out innocuously enough. Sarah was surprised to hear from me, but she was friendly, and I soon found myself telling her about the things that had been happening with Lily. I didn't mention the recordings yet, but I described how Lily had been subtly undermining me, trying to paint me as someone unstable. I watched Sarah closely as I spoke, looking for any sign that she knew more than she let on. "Well," Sarah said after a long pause, "Lily always had a way of making herself look like the perfect sister. But she's not always as sweet as she seems. Back in college, she'd do this thing where she'd act like she was helping, but then she'd turn everything around to make herself look good. It was like she was trying to control every situation. I don't know, I just got tired of it. She always had this way of making everyone think that she was the one who was right no matter what." I couldn't believe my ears. Sarah's words confirmed everything I had suspected. It wasn't just me. Lily had been playing this game for years, manipulating people, controlling the narrative, making them believe that she was the only one who understood what was going on. This was a pattern, and I wasn't the only one who had been affected by it. Sarah continued, "I don't know if it was always intentional, but she would always twist things. If something went wrong, it was never her fault. If someone else made a mistake, she'd turn it around so that it looked like they had messed up, not her. It was like she had this need to be seen as perfect no matter the cost." I thanked Sarah for her honesty and hung up the phone, my mind racing. This wasn't just a few bad decisions or misunderstandings. This was manipulation on a scale I hadn't fully grasped before. I now had confirmation that Lily's behavior wasn't just a phase. It was who she was. And if I could gather more stories like Sarah's, I would have the ammunition I needed to expose her. But I wasn't done yet. I spent the next few days gathering more information. I reached out to a few of Lily's other old friends, and even a couple of people who had once worked with her. The stories all started to fit the same pattern. She had a history of controlling, manipulating, and twisting the truth to suit her needs. The more I learned, the more I understood just how deep this went. One of the most significant pieces of evidence came from an unexpected source, my cousin Chloe. Chloe had always been more of an outsider when it came to family events, but she had observed things from a distance. I had never realized how much she had picked up on over the years. During a family gathering, I decided to talk to Chloe. I told her everything about Lily's behavior, the recordings, the way everyone was starting to believe her version of events. "I've noticed it too," Chloe said quietly, her voice laced with concern. "Lily has always been the one who's been able to twist things, to make everyone think she's the one with all the answers. I've seen how she turns things around, makes you look like the bad guy. But you're not the problem, Lena. You never have been." Her words felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this fight. Chloe's support gave me the strength to keep going. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting everyone who had been affected by Lily's lies. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I knew that the real challenge was still ahead. I couldn't expose Lily without risking everything. My family, my relationships, everything I had built. But as I looked at the evidence I had gathered, I knew that I couldn't let Lily continue to manipulate everyone. It was time for the truth to come out. I had spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence, and slowly piecing together the fragmented truth. It wasn't easy, living with the anxiety of waiting for the right moment to reveal everything. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep Lily's manipulations ran. How carefully she had spun her web, not just around me, but around everyone she came into contact with. But despite all my preparation, nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. I had made my decision. I would confront Lily directly. I would expose everything. It was terrifying to think about, but the thought of continuing to live in a world where my family believed lies about me was far worse. The weight of that realization was enough to drive me forward. No more hiding. No more playing by her rules. It was time for the truth to come out. The day of the confrontation came faster than I had expected. It was a Sunday, and my parents had invited me to dinner at their house. I knew Lily would be there, and I was nervous. But the nervousness wasn't because I was unsure of my actions, it was the opposite. I was nervous because I knew that what I was about to do would change everything. Once the truth was out, there would be no going back. I arrived at my parents' house early, hoping to get a few moments alone to gather my thoughts before the storm hit. The familiar smell of dinner wafted through the air, and the sound of my mom humming in the kitchen added to the normalcy of the scene. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension, a quiet hum in the background, like the stillness just before a storm. My parents greeted me warmly, and we sat down at the table, exchanging casual small talk. But I could tell something was off. My mom kept glancing at me, and my dad seemed distracted, as if he were waiting for something. The unease in the air was palpable, and I realized that Lily had probably already started to plant seeds of doubt in their minds. I took a deep breath. This was it. Lily arrived shortly after, looking as composed and confident as always. She smiled brightly when she saw me, but there was a coldness in her eyes, something that I couldn't quite place. I knew she had been expecting this moment, the confrontation. She had to have known that I wouldn't sit back forever, that I would eventually see through her lies. We exchanged pleasantries, but I could feel the tension rising with every passing second. Dinner started, but it was clear that everyone's attention was focused on the undercurrent of our strained relationship. The polite conversation felt like a performance, everyone pretending that things were normal, when I knew that things could never be the same again. I could feel Lily's eyes on me, the subtle way she was watching me for any sign that I might make a move. I knew she was waiting for the inevitable, but what she didn't know was that I was ready. I had everything I needed, and I wasn't backing down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I couldn't take it any longer. I had to speak up. I stood up, my hands shaking slightly but my resolve clear. Lily, we need to talk. The room went silent. My parents exchanged nervous glances, clearly unsure of where this was heading. Lily's smile faltered, and she narrowed her eyes slightly. She knew this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. I know what you've been doing, I continued, my voice steady but firm. I know how you've been manipulating everyone around us. How you've been making them believe things about me that aren't true. And I'm done. I'm done letting you twist everything to make yourself look like the good guy, while I get painted as the crazy one. Lily's face paled for just a moment, but then she quickly regained her composure. What are you talking about, Lena? You've been acting paranoid. Everyone can see that. I'm just trying to help you. That's the problem, Lily, I snapped. You've been pretending to help me, but all you've been doing is making me look unstable, making me look like I'm losing control. And you've been doing it for months, maybe longer. You've been playing this game for so long, and it's time for it to stop. Lily's eyes flashed with anger, and she stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're delusional. You think I've been lying about you? Everyone can see that you're the one who's been. No, I interrupted, my voice sharp. I'm not delusional. You are. And I've got the proof to prove it. The room fell into a stunned silence. I could see the confusion in my parents' eyes, their disbelief at the tension building between us. But I wasn't going to stop now. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I recorded our conversation, I said, holding the phone out for them to see. I've been documenting everything. Every time you've twisted the truth to make me look crazy. And I've got more. I pressed play, and Lily's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. Her words, carefully crafted to undermine me, to paint me as someone incapable of handling her emotions, were now laid bare for everyone to hear. The room was silent as the recording played, the truth ringing out with every word. Lily's face turned a shade of crimson, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't let her. And that's not all, I said, my voice unwavering. I've spoken to your old friends, your co-workers, people who have seen this side of you before. I have their stories, their testimonies. You've been doing this for years. And I'm done letting you manipulate me and everyone else. The shock on my parents' faces was evident. My mom looked like she was about to speak, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. My dad, who had always been the one to keep the peace, sat with his jaw clenched, as if processing the weight of everything I had just revealed. Lily, on the other hand, was visibly shaking. Her perfect facade had crumbled, and for the first time she looked vulnerable. "You don't know what you're talking about, Lena," she said weakly. "I'm the one who's been helping you, trying to make sure you don't fall apart. You're the one who's lost it." "I'm not lost," I replied, my voice soft but firm. "You're the one who's lost. Lost in your need to control everyone around you, to manipulate them into believing that you're the only one who's right. But you're not. And I'm not going to let you do this anymore." There was a long pause. I could feel the weight of the moment hanging in the air. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I knew that I had done the right thing. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally in control again. The silence was broken when my mom finally spoke. I don't know what to say," she whispered, looking between me and Lily. "I had no idea. Thought, I know, Mom," I said softly. "I know you didn't know. But now you do. And I hope you'll believe me. I've been telling the truth the whole time." Lily's shoulders slumped, and she finally sank back into her chair. She didn't say anything for a long time, and in that moment I realized that she knew she had been caught. There was no going back for her now. The lies had been exposed. "I don't know what happened to us," my dad said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "How did it get this far?" "We'll figure it out," I replied, my voice steady but calm. "We'll rebuild. We'll find a way forward. But we can't do that until the truth is out." It wasn't an easy road from there. Lily didn't accept the truth immediately, and she didn't apologize. But the damage had been done, and there was no way for her to manipulate anyone anymore. Slowly, things began to shift. The family dynamics started to change, and Lily's grip on everyone began to loosen. It wasn't a quick fix, and there were still moments of tension, but the healing process had begun. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I had exposed the truth and I had taken control of my own life. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the one who was crazy. Lily was the one with the problem, and it was time for everyone else to see it.